Hi folks, thanks for clicking on the video. My name is McSquirgle, and today I would like to talk about my testing of Spyderco's VG10 stainless steel. So what I'm doing here is I'm on a quest to test different steels and sort of be able to catalog and define how well a particular steel performs in these edge retention tests that I am doing. Though I'm testing using sisal rope. This is half-inch sisal rope, and what I do is, I cut the rope with a knife with a specific point on the blade of a knife, and I try and replicate the cuts as best as I can until the edge will no longer slice a held sheet of paper, like so. When it no longer slices the paper and tears it, that is when I call the test over. Right. So far, I have tested a few other steels. I started with the Spyderco Astute here, 8CR13 MOV. This got a pretty good result. I think 280 cuts of the sisal rope before it would no longer slice the paper. Then I tested AUS8 with this Almar Eagle Ultralight. And AUS8 got, I believe it was 320 cuts before it would no longer slice paper, which was a surprising result. I have also tested Buck's 420HC, and I think that got about 80 cuts with, a very refined edge that I had put on it with a KME system. Oh yeah, by the way, when I test the knives, I test the stock edge first, then I sharpen it, put a KME edge on it, and then retest it. That way I get results for both the stock edge and the sharpened edge for the knives, the steels that I'm testing. The sharpened edge always does better than the initial stock edge that comes out of a box with a knife. Yeah, I've also tested Buck's 420HC. I think that got about 80 cuts with the sharpened edge, and I've also tested A2. I haven't released the film for the A2 edge retention test, but that's coming soon. But I've been working with this knife, the Spyderco Stretch 2 Lightweight, because I wanted to test the VG10 and be able to, add it to my list of results on different steels. It's taken me a long time to put all of this together because I hadn't been satisfied with the results. I sort of expected VG10 to do a little bit better. And I assumed that I must be doing something wrong because, the stock edge only got about 40 cuts on it before it would no longer slice the paper, which, you can't really compare any two knives because they have different grinds. Like this Astute is slightly thinner behind the edge than the Stretch 2 Lightweight. So, I can't really compare them directly unless I had all of the same knife with different steels, which would be hard to do. I know Spyderco does a lot of knives with different steels, but, you can't get all of the steels on a specific knife. So, anyway, I got 40 cuts with the stock edge. And that was where I realized that I might not get a result that I really like with this knife. But I went ahead and I sharpened it with the KME. I sharpened it to about an 18 degree per side edge, to a pretty high polish. I used the KME stones, starting from 140 grit, and then I move up the progression from 140 to 300 to 600, and then stop at 1500 grit. And then I strop them with my leather strops with my Gunny Juice stropping emulsion at 6 micron, 3 micron, and 1 micron. And then I tested the edge after I had sharpened and stropped it, just a paper test, and made sure that the edge was, good enough to test on, as symmetrical as possible, and retested it. And the first sharpened edge only got about 80 cuts, which was, it was pretty scary, because the Astute and HCR 13 MOV got 280 cuts on the first sharpened edge. And I think I expected a lot more out of VG10 than I got. By the way, the Spyderco Astute is thinner behind the edge than the Stretch 2 lightweight. So, that can account for some of the variation, some of the difference in the amount of cuts, the amount of cutting that I'm able to get from each knife. But, it shouldn't be 3 times more than the Stretch 2 lightweight. Or at least, not that I could see anyway. I've been working on this for a long time. I think I started testing this back in November. And then, the holidays came. So it took me some time to get all this testing done and to be able to put it all together and put all my thoughts together on it. But I've really been kind of nervous about it, because I have a lot of respect for Spyderco. Spyderco is my favorite brand in the knife industry by a lot. I have really high expectations of them. So when I saw that this knife wasn't really, at least in my testing, it was not, in these particular tests, it was not really performing as well as I wanted it to. So, after this first sharpened edge test that got 80 cuts, I went to the Spyderco forum, and I started talking to Spyderco people, and posting on their forums, asking, how well should this VG10 perform? And I got a lot of responses. I got a lot of people offering advice and pointers and tips on how to get more performance out of Spyderco's VG10. Among the tips that they gave me, they suggested that after the next time that I was going to sharpen the knife, that I should dull it completely before resharpening it again, because that would lead to getting a better edge in the end. So I started trying that. So for this next test, after I finished the 80 cut test, which is the first sharpened edge test, I dulled it with this little whetstone that I have here. This is an Arkansas stone. So I would dull the edge and then resharpen it on the KME with the same progression, 140, 300, 600, and 1500. And then also do the same stropping progression with the Gunny Juice on the same leather strops. And then test it yet again. And on that test, the second sharpened edge test, which is the third test that I've done total on the knife now, only got 100 cuts. So one thing I could say here is each of the tests I'm doing is getting better, but, you know, not 280 cuts better. It's still not yet amounting to what the Astute was able to cut on this particular test. So, you know, it kind of worried me a bit. By this point, I'm fully worried that I am not going to get a good result with this knife on this test. And I decided that I needed to keep going. So I sharpened the knife yet again. Well, first dulling it on the Arkansas stone, resharpening it yet again on the KME with the same grit progression, and then in the same stropping progression with my leather strops, and then testing it again. This time getting 125 cuts of the sisal rope before it would no longer cut paper, slice paper cleanly. Which, you know, still, the tests are getting better, but just not a whole lot better each time. I was expecting, you know, at least as good of a result with the stretched lightweight as I was getting with the Astute. I was hoping to get at least 280 cuts out of this. But I did not. So I went back to the Spyderco forum to look for more pointers, more tips. And somebody suggested that I maybe change my the angle at which I was sharpening the edges on this knife. I typically do an 18-degree per side KME edge on my knives. I like the 18-degree edge because it makes it so that the bevel isn't too large. Because I don't really want to disfigure a knife. You know, I want the edge to be polished and nice looking, but I don't want it to take up, you know, more of the grind of a blade than I'd really like to. I don't want to disfigure it, like I say. But someone convinced me that I should put a more acute angle on it. So I changed to a 16-degree per side, from 18 down to 16. So it's a more acute edge with the same grit progression and stropping progression, and then retested it yet again. And that test got 210 cuts, which is a big jump from 125 to 210. The 210 is a result that I'm more comfortable with than the rate at which I was going. So I'm pretty happy with that, or happy enough to stop at this point. For no other reason than I'm kind of sick of it. Honestly, I'd like to move on to a different knife, a different steel. I just have not been able to get a really impressive result with VG10, which is a shame because, you know, I love Spyderco, and VG10 is kind of, in a way, it's kind of Spyderco's flagship steel, or their basic mid-range option from Spyderco. And I assumed that it would perform at least as well as the 8CR13 MOV on this Astute, or the AUS8 on this Almar Eagle. But I just have not been able to get that kind of performance in this particular test out of this knife. This particular knife, anyway. I don't know if it's a lemon, or if that's just, if VG10 in particular just does not do well in this specific test with sisal rope. There is a bit more to it, though. Like I was saying earlier, it isn't fair for me to compare these knives as if they're the same knife, this one in HCR13 and this one in VG10. They're different knives with different geometry, this being slightly thicker than the Astute here. So, you know, a thinner blade, I think, should perform better, or at least according to this test, a thinner blade should perform better with this test than a thicker one. So it isn't fair for me to compare them directly as if they're the same knife. Still, though, I think I'm just a little unimpressed with VG10 so far in this test. I'd like to test it again. I'd like to get a different knife in VG10 someday that, you know, hopefully performs better than the max 210 cuts I was able to get with it. What I will say, I love this stretch, the stretch knife as a platform, the Spyderco stretch. It's probably my favorite Seki City Spyderco knife currently in production. It just feels so great in hand, and I'm really happy to have been able to work with this particular knife with these ergonomics in this test. It really is a great knife for this type of repetitive cutting. I'm a big fan of this stretch. The Stretch 2XL in CPM Crewwear, one of my favorite knives, very comfy. I think next time, I'll probably take the pocket clip off next time if I test a stretch again, just to make it, you know, slightly more comfortable. The injection molded scales here are just they're very grippy, and they're chamfered nicely. It's just a joy to hold this knife in a repetitive cutting task like this sisal rope test is. All that said, I'm not really reviewing the knife itself. I'm more just reporting the results of the test as I have them here. I'd like to know what your guys' experience is with VG10. I know it's a favorite among Spyderco fans. I know it should perform better than it has for me in this test. I wonder what you guys think. Do I have a lemon here, or does VG10 just not perform well with this test? Is my test just totally flawed? I mean, I'd be willing to believe anything right now. I really expected more out of it, and I'm kind of disappointed. I'm disappointed maybe in myself that I wasn't able to get a result that I was happy with. And I think that's part of the reason why it's taken me so long to get this film out, is I'm a bit nervous about it. Like I don't really want people to think that I am saying bad things about Spyderco, because I love Spyderco, and this will not get me to stop buying Spyderco knives at all, because the vast majority, well, in fact, every knife that I have ever had from Spyderco has performed at least to my expectations, except for this Stretch 2 lightweight for some reason. So yeah, once again, let me know what you guys think about this test. Is this user error? Is this, a lemon knife? Am I just misunderstanding the best use case scenario for a steel like VG10? Yeah, let me know. Like, could I have done this better? How can I change the test to get a better result with this knife or with VG10? Anyway, thanks for watching. My next film is going to be a review of the NAF's large Lulu with A2. Really excited about that. Thanks. Bye.